Hey everybody, and welcome back to another lecture with Coding with Roby. And in this lecture, we're going to wrap up our address and our API to be able to create a new address and save the foreign key to the user. So really awesome stuff. So the first thing we're going to have to do here is to create a new post request. And we can do that by saying @router.post parentheses and then a slash. Under this, we want to create a new function. So async def create address. And then as the parameters, we're going to say address of type address. User of type dictionary equals depends get current user. And DB of type session equals depends get DB. We then want to say if user is none, raise get user exception. So to be able to create an address, the user must already exist. And then address model equals models.address. Address model.address1 equals address.address1. Address model.address2 equals address.address2. Address underscore model.city equals address.city. Address model.state equals address.state. Address model.country equals address.country. And lastly, address model.postal code will equal our address.postal code that's getting passed in. We then want to say db.add our address model. And instead of committing here, we want to say db.flush. And what db.flush is it's kind of like a commit. It gets it staged for a commit. However, it returns the ID or any of the columns that the database is going to create automatically, like an ID. It creates that, so now our address model now has an ID attached to it, even though we didn't actually add an ID. So it's really powerful. For example, the next thing we're going to say is user underscore model equals db.query models.users.filter models.users.id is equal to user.getID.first. And now user model is going to have all of the information of the user that's currently signed in. And now that we have that ID, we can now align it with our address model ID. So now we can say user underscore model.address ID is equal to the address model.id. So now user model is going to have the foreign key, which is the address ID, equal to the ID of the address model. We then want to say db.add the user model along with the address model. And then finally, db.commit. All right, so I know that was quite a bit of code, but now let's test our application and see what happens. If we go into our terminal and we type in uvicorn main:\app -- reload. And we go to our browser and we refresh our documentation, we can see that we have, we need to add our, let me stop the server. We need to go to our main.py file and add in our route. So to do this, the first thing we need to do is just where it says auth, comma, to-dos, we can say comma address. And then down here where we say to-dos.router, we're going to want to do the same thing but for address. So app.include router parentheses address.router. All right, now let's type in the uvicorn main:app -- reload. Go back to our browser, refresh the page, and there we can see our address. Our address is protected behind a authentication. So what we're going to do here is we are going to sign in to get our token. So try it out, and I'm going to type in coding with Roby, password test 1234 exclamation mark. Execute. All right, and when we scroll down, we are getting an error. Interesting. Okay, so the error is saying no foreign keys error. Okay, we probably just typed in a wrong attribute. Yeah, so right here we're talking about our address ID inside our users table. We are saying foreign key is our address underscore ID, where it's actually address.id. All right, now let's go back into our terminal. It's currently running. Let's go back to our browser and execute again. And there we have our token. So let's grab our token. And now let's hop into Postman. And let's go into authorization, swap out our token with our new token. And let's go to our body where we're going to have our address 1, address 2, city, state, country, and postal code. So before we call this, we can see that in our users, we have no information in our address IDs. And if we say address right here, we have nothing getting saved inside here as well. So now let's go back to our browser, or let's go back to Postman, and I'm just going to type in string for all of these just to hide, identity of, real life addresses and cities and things. So you can type in whatever you want here, but I'm just going to leave it as string. We're going to be calling our post address API with our new token in our authorization. When I click send, we're getting a 200 and we're getting a null because we're not actually returning anything. But if we go back to our database and we rerun select all from address, we can see that there's a postal code that says string, country that says string, city that says string. They all say string. And we have an ID of 1 for our first record. If we open up our users now, coding with Roby should now have an address ID of 1. And there we have it. We have our address ID of 1, which is a foreign key that represents the address primary key. So again, that's 1 for the coding with Roby address ID. And if we go back to address, our primary key is 1, so they're connected that way. This is awesome, awesome stuff. And let's go back to users. And now one thing we haven't added yet, which I'm going to leave as something that you guys can work on, is adding the phone number. So our phone number is null right now, but it's definitely part of a user. And to give you a little hint on how you could fix that, if you go into your auth.py file, where we're keeping our secret and our algorithm, we can add our phone number now to creating a new user if we want to. And then just save the new phone number with the submission when a user is registering and creating a new account. But overall, we learned all about Alembic. We added 2 new columns to our user table, one which is just phone number, which is just a standard column, and an address ID, which has a relationship to another table that we also created using Alembic called address. This is very, very awesome stuff. Now, this wraps up everything for this section, and I will see you in the next video.